Hello and welcome back to Dead... I already forgot what it's called again, but I think it's the Dead End Aegis Gaiden. It's something. Dead Aegis Gaiden. And so our existence was heralded as a revolutionary discovery. But at the same time, we are also seen as an incomprehensible, suspicious presence. You're the only ones who have produced any kind of results, as such, that should be acknowledged and put into use. That's my stance, at least. It's strange. I can somehow feel the frustration in his words from having his opinion discarded. In the eyes of those stubborn fools, you three are an unplanned development that came out of nowhere. Right now, we're getting in the way of their plans. On the off chance you deal a crippling, decisive blow to the enemy, all of the funds they invested and facilities they built will have been for nothing.
部隊として認めさせただけでも上出来ということですか?
Precisely. I don't know what kind of deal we made with the top brass, but it seems that in exchange for being allowed to form a unit, we've been told to stay clear of the fighting. We've been stationed far away from the battlefield on an orbital base that circles... Oh, this is not him talking. That circles the Earth. Even if we deploy right away, we won't make it before the first shots are fired.
よくわかんないな。そもそもさ、無理だと思うけど、ザコとは戦えるにしても、あのでっかいのはどうすんの?
She's referring to the gigantic enemy where we got our power. For now, it's been designated Gaiden Eye. Gaiden was an aloof surrealist artist dating from the late 19th century to early 20th century. His works depicted all sorts of monstrosities. One of them is a gigantic floating eyeball, which looks similar to that alien. They'll use their special weapon.
反応弾のことですわね。宇宙空間で初めての実戦投入ですか?
The reactor warhead. It's only been used 5 times in history because of how utterly destructive it is. It is mankind's ultimate weapon.
おー、核兵器か! でもさ、大抵の場合、効果ないんだよね。核でも倒せぬとはとかいう展開になりがち。
That's how the movies and books Lisette likes usually end up going. He'll do this time. That won't be the case. His tone, however, makes it clear that he fully expects Lisette's prediction to come true.
ですが、北京条約で宇宙空間に反応弾を配備するのは禁じられていたのでは?
Preparations for their use were secretly made in anticipation of possible enemy attacks. This is a good excuse for them to openly utilize them.
噂は本当だったというわけですわね。
Khonshu's voice is ice cold. She's originally from the moon, where an independence movement has been gaining popularity in recent years. There are rumors that the nations of Earth are preparing to use nuclear weapons to silence them.
当たり前じゃん! 秘密兵器っていうのは秘密で秘密だから秘密のうちに配備されてるものなのさ!
Yeah, if they're secret weapons, then yeah, they're secret. That's kind of why they're called secret weapons.
そうか! 僕らがまだ導入されないのは秘密戦隊だからだったんだな! なるほど! そうかそうか!
A secret squadron. That reminds me of something. Lisette has shown me media with secret squadrons and all sorts of special rangers, but why do they all have to dress in such flashy colors? I'm pretty sure that such gaudy costumes make them an unforgettable sight. How are they supposed to be secret? That's right, you're a secret squadron. Most people on Earth don't know of our existence yet. But by the time this battle ends, they'll know about us one way or another. You're the only ones who can fight them. His words are full of certainty and confidence. He's such a strange man. Without him, we never would have been acknowledged as a unit. The 6 lasers Khonshu fired hit 2 enemies in sets of 3. One alien was cut into 3 distinct pieces, while the other was blown in half, though it kept coming toward us. With the aliens' formation disrupted, Lisette and I easily dispatched the rest. Lisette took down 2 by herself while I finished the one with Khonshu maimed before I killed another.
また勝ったぞ。私たちの力が通用しますのね。まだお嬢は信じなくてもいいけどさ、僕はヒーローだから当然だね。
Following our initial victory, the 3 of us have beaten back wave after wave of these aliens. At this point, the 3 of us have killed over 50 of them.
来ないなぁ。もう玉切れかにゃ？そうか、僕らに恐怖したな。あの巨大な敵が火星圏から離れたからだと思いますわ。
I agreed with Khonshu's assessment. The gigantic presence was shifting further away. It felt strange. Ever since I assumed this form, it felt like my senses were adapting to space. It was like I could feel things against my skin or smell them despite the vacuum. The gigantic enemy felt like a sense of pressure, or maybe a distant source of heat, but by now it stopped feeling like it for some time. Not only was the gigantic enemy moving away from us, we were moving away from it while evading the smaller aliens. At this point, we had grown distant from it.
なら生存者の救出だ。なんたって僕らはヒーローだからな。
We made our way to the Phobos and Deimos bases. Along the way, we found the ruins of the fleet. Dozens of wrecked ships floated through space without a survivor to be found. In fact, we didn't even find any corpses. Both bases were completely destroyed, and just as devoid of life as the shipwrecks. It occurred to me that perhaps the enemies swarmed by human, regardless of if they were still alive or already dead, and carried them back to the mothership. The broken, crushed remains of humans we had seen back at the mothership supported that idea. Having found nothing in outer space, we went to Mars's surface. Mars's development wasn't all that advanced yet. Its population consisted of only 10,000 people, most of who lived in the East Canal base. We decided to search there first. The moment the base came into view, it was evident that the odds of anyone surviving were slim. The base's 5 massive domes were all destroyed, and the corridors connecting those domes to assorted facilities were breached in countless places. It was clear that the internal atmosphere was gone from the way each hole was surrounded by large amounts of debris. There probably hadn't been any time for emergency procedures or evacuations. We went to the underground control room, discovering that it had been breached. However, it seemed to have escaped the initial attack. Only the doors and walls had been destroyed. Still, it was clear that the people here had met a horrible fate. There were puddles of blood, unidentifiable red smears, and bullet holes everywhere. All the evidence drew a dismal picture of what transpired here. The survivors of the initial attack had likely been forced to retreat deeply into the facility by the enemies. Here they made a futile last stand before meeting their end. Fortunately for us, while the primary power had failed, the auxiliary power was still on. We were able to successfully reboot the systems. Most of the monitors immediately glowed red with alerts, but we could still get a grasp on the situation in the facility. It didn't look good. Most of the facility's air had been vented into Mars's thin atmosphere. No one would still be alive unless they were wearing a space suit. Although there were distress signals going off across Mars's surface, all of them were automatically transmitted. The other base was small. It was meant for studying geology, consisting of 3 small domes. All 3 domes had large cracks running through them. We split up, searching for survivors, but found nothing. The most interesting thing we found was a small rover, the kind designed to be piloted by someone wearing their own spacesuit. Its wreck was a good distance away from the base's perimeter. There was a large amount of blood on the driver's seat, which implied the driver was killed while trying to escape before his body was carried off. Aside from the blood, all we could find of him was a bloodied name tag that said, Takahashi Izuka.
おかしい。ここには絶対にいるはずだ。僕の野生の勘が告げているんだ。この探査車の行動、少々不自然ですわね。
When I asked what was strange about it, Khonshu replied by pointing to the tire's tracks.
襲撃を受けたなら一刻も早く逃げようとするはずですわ。それなのにここで一旦停止してから再度発進してますわ。 しかも、
Any other words, they were distracting the enemy. In other words, they were distracting the enemy? Is that what she thought the rover's driver had been doing?
慌てて操縦してたまたまとも考えられますけど。わかったぞ!
Lisette approached a ruined material storehouse near the rover's wreck. She pulled on one of the thin, flexible walls, tearing it away. The wall was really just a sheet, made to keep the dust off of the materials stored within. The unpressurized interior was spacious, clearly meant to enable work while in a spacesuit. Most of the supplies within had been ruined. This was really a poor choice of a hiding place. Even if you were looking for survivors, this storehouse would be the last place you'd think to find one. But now, with the wall pulled away, we found a small form in a spacesuit sitting huddled on the ground.
生きてる？ああ！生きてる！生きてる！生存者発見！だって
I have a bad feeling about whatever's going on. Lisette reached out for a small figure. The face I saw through the visor was that of a small girl, barely into her teens, if even that.
なるほど。一度は敵に襲撃された場所にわざわざ隠したというわけですわね。
The girl's eyes were completely blank. She didn't respond to anything we said.
あれ？もしもし？立てないのかな？
Scattered around her feet were over 10 tanks of air. Apparently she'd been using them to survive for some time.
もしかして怖がってる？なら大丈夫！僕はヒーローだから！何言ってますの？救助に来たのだとちゃんと伝えるのが先ですわ。いきなりヒーローと言われて納得する方がいるとでも？
I simply said my mind. Being a hero suits the set. She is a hero to me, after all.
じゃあこれあげる！
I raised my voice in surprise. Lisette was holding onto a badge of the invincible girl Gretel. The cartoon was more than 10 years old at this point, but she still kept the badge with her now. She even wore it as a pendant. I once looked it up on a whim. Apparently it's worth a lot of money to the right collectors. Not that Lisette would ever be willing to sell it, though.
何かあったらこれを握って、ヒーロー助けてって呼べば、僕がどこからでも駆けつけるから。
That's cute. With a timid nod, the girl reached out and took the pendant from the set. Hanshi brought over another tank of oxygen for the girl. When I asked where she had found it, apparently it had been in another storeroom in the dome. I took a moment to digest all the information we had gathered. It had probably been quite some time since the enemy attacked this spot, judging from the amount of empty tanks surrounding the girl. It was clear that the fact she'd survived for so long was nothing short of a miracle. I'm not sure why it took so long for me to realize that. Hanshi approached the girl, saying,
大変ですわ。この子のタンク、酸素残量がほぼゼロですわ。キルケ、手分けして探しますわよ。
Okay, she's dying. With that, she quickly exchanged the girl's oxygen tank. She moved efficiently, without any wasted motions. Watching Hanshi work made me feel a bit pathetic, inferior to her even. On top of that, we had rescued this girl, but now where were we to get her off of Mars?
そうだ！この子も変身させちゃおう！
Of course.
却下ですわ。
Yeah, no.
どうして？僕らと同じ状況に彼
Oh,
女
if we
もす
put
れ
her
ば
in
で
the
き
same
るように
position.
なるって！
Yeah, let's just almost kill her with, tentacles. Sure. At first, I almost agreed with the idea. We were examples that it was possible. All we would have to do was put her in the same position as we were. The moment the meaning of what that would entail clicked into place, I found myself shouting at her. Lisette, what are you thinking? Yeah, stupid. Doing that would mean having this little girl suffer through all the terrible things we endured.
だから、そうすればこの子だって変身できるじゃん。
Or she'll just die. She said that while looking at me like she didn't understand what was wrong with the idea. It actually made me feel like I was in the wrong for not agreeing with her.
確かに、同じ状況に置けば変身できるようになるかもしれませんわね。
I couldn't help but let out a shocked, huh? Even Kanji was agreeing that we should put this poor little girl through that awful experience.
で でも、どうやってあそこへ連れて行きますの？僕がおぶって、とか？秘密服だけしか防護がない人間を抜き出しのまま運ぶんですの？無理か
Thinking back on it, the first half of Lisette's proposal, to carry the girl on our backs, would actually have been possible. It's just that back then, we weren't sure if our powers were capable of that. At first, we took the girl back to one of the few pasteurized sections of the East Canal base that had survived the attack, all while the base's automatic distress signal continued to broadcast. While continuing to search the area, we found a working low-orbit shuttle. Fearing that the enemy might come back to check the base a second time, we decided to use it to fly the girl and what supplies we were able to scavenge from the base for her some distance away. The three of us patrolled around the hidden shuttle, anticipating that we might have to fend off another enemy attack. It was then that we picked up a transmission from the Geological Survey Base's communication terminal. Someone had responded to the ongoing distress signal. The message came from a high-speed transport ship named the Herschel that was on its way to Mars. They had no idea of what had transpired here on Mars, but they expressed concern that all transmissions aside from distress calls had ceased. Kanji reported that all of mankind in Mars's sphere of influence had been attacked and wiped out, and that the four of us seemed to be the only survivors. At first, they didn't believe us. But once we provided our biometric data, proving that we were with the UEF, someone else replaced the person that had initially hailed us. That someone introduced herself as Major General Rupert Kinnison of the UEF. That was how we first met the commander. He was on his way to his new station at the Deimos base to serve as the detachment commander of the UEF's Mars's surface fleet there. Between the images of the East Canal base's ruins that we sent him and the fact that communications were down across the planet, he eventually believed our story. The UEF headquarters has confirmed the situation. We acknowledge the situation on Mars, but we lack any detailed information. Anything you provide us with is valuable and important. Are you assigned the Deimos detachment?
はい、閣下。
Then I hereby order that you extract the civilian survivor and evacuate the planet immediately. With the girl on our shuttle, we configured it to fly up to the rendezvous point on autopilot, with the three of us flying information around it to guard it. Less than 5 minutes passed once we reached the rendezvous point, before we received an emergency transmission from the Herschel. Our vessel, the Herschel, is currently under attack by unidentified flying objects. You have vital intelligence, which makes you more valuable than us. Evacuate at once.
奴らが来たんだ!
Lisette flew off before she even finished her sentence. Moving so quickly she turned into a flash of light.
キルケ、シャトルの護衛には私が残りますから、あなたはリゼットと。
Already not listening to orders. Her powers make her more capable of fending off multiple enemies at once, so I agreed with her decision. With a nod, I sped off after Lisette. The faster I flew, the more excited I seemed to get. That fact bothered me some, but there wasn't anything I could do about it at the moment. I spotted the Herschel in the distance. Its shape was clearly different than that of a civilian transport. Its cargo holds were smaller, while its fuel tanks and engines were larger. It wasn't a transport for general usage, but a military vessel with priorities other than fuel consumption and ease of maintenance. To command such a ship, Rupert Kinnison must have been a particularly high-ranking UEF officer. The Herschel was under attack by 20 enemies. Perhaps they were meant as replacements for the enemies we'd taken out earlier. Lisette generated a gigantic burning sword from her hand, using it to cut down the enemies closing in on the high-speed transport. The sword was even bigger than when I first saw her use it. It must have been more than 10 times as long as she was tall. Seeing that made me realize I could go big too. Now I wanted to cry, cutting loose as well. With a thought, I extended my spear of light. To my surprise, it readily grew to such a length without even becoming any heavier. What a strange weapon. It moved exactly as I willed it to, swinging it around. I mowed down the enemies around me. With a single swing, I cut through 3 enemies at once. Behind us, I could sense 5 enemies breaking off to attack the shuttle. Khonshu shot them down with her lasers before they could reach it. The battle ended in less than 5 minutes. The enemy had been wiped out, and we were unharmed. Once the shuttle docked with the Herschel, the survivor girl was brought on board.
敵の襲撃はまだ終わりとは限りません。我々は護衛を務めさせていただきますわ。いただきます。乗らないの？だって乗るわけにはいきませんわよ。認証確認したとはいえ、私たちだって。
Khonshu's voice wasn't coming from my earpiece, but was instead resonating directly inside my head.
今の戦いぶりも見られてしまいましたもの。向こうだって私たちに疑念を持っているはずですわ。
Alright. After what the aliens did to us, there's no way that we seem like normal humans anymore.
そうか。魔法少女は魔法少女だってバレると大変なことになるのが常識だった。
Just for the rules. First Lieutenant Lisette Aguirre, First Lieutenant Circe Bernhard, and First Lieutenant Li Khonshu. Now then, I order you by my authority as your commander. Aboard the vessel at once. You may leave your gear in its current state. We heard noise stirring behind Commander Kinnison. The other high-ranking officers with him must have disagreed with his decision. However, Commander Kinnison silenced their objections with a single roar.
話がわかる！この
Khonshu, Lisette, and I passed through the airlock into the ship. Allow me to confirm, you are cadets, affiliated with the Deimos detachment, correct? First Lieutenant Lisette Aguirre. I just can't say it right. I think it's Aguirre, but it looks a little weird. First Lieutenant Li Khonshu and First Lieutenant Circe Bernhard.
Hi, Kaka.
Commander Kinnison, though at this point in time he was still just Major General Kinnison, was a solemn name. He invoked the image of cold-forged steel in my mind. He was on a wholly different level than the 3 officers standing behind him. The 3 of them looked at us with a mixture of disgust and curiosity, but Kinnison's gaze was unclouded as he looked straight at us. One of the 3 snapped at us, telling us to do away with those ridiculous outfits if we considered ourselves soldiers of the UEF. Khonshu and I exchanged glances. We weren't really sure how we changed into our forms, so we weren't sure how to get out of them either.
了解しました。到着。
Roger, Dodger. In the blink of an eye, Lisette returned to how she looked before transforming.
そんな。あれ？なんで脱がないの？ここって軍隊だから上官の命令に従わないとまずいんじゃなかったっけ？
Major General Kinnison suddenly turned around to face the 3 men behind him. You seem to regard these 3 as dangerous. Exit this room and close the door to guarantee your safety. This is an order. The 3 officers began complaining loudly. I repeat, this is an order. I assume all responsibility for this. At the Major General's words, they fell silent and moved to the adjacent room. First Lieutenant Lisette Aguirre, you may put on your attire from earlier.
Hi! Hey! Henshin!
Firstly, I want you to tell me just how you came to possess this power. Tell me everything.
意見具申をしてもよろしいでしょうか？
You have my permission?
なぜ私たちのような怪しげな存在を敵ではないと判断したのですか？
It's simple. I watched you fight on the monitor earlier. Human technology can't harm the enemy. Their mobility far exceeds ours. No UEF fleet would be able to oppose them. As it stands, current human technology can't defend those aliens. The only ones who seem to have the potential to defeat them are you 3. In this situation, all we can do is rely on you. Does that explanation put your mind at ease? Lisette exhaled proudly out of her nose and pumped her fist with excitement.
来た 燃える、燃えたぎるよ。地球の運命は僕にかかっているのか。リゼット、少々の前でその態度は。
I was pretty nervous too. I've chided the set about her attitude plenty of times already in the past, but it always just goes in one ear and out the other. You're exactly right. At least I think you are. But it would probably require great sacrifices to get the top brass to see things our way. I was shocked. How could someone be so amazing? He was the only one who didn't get irritated or angered by Lisette's antics. Following that, Hanshi did most of the talking. She explained the course of events, starting from our debris removal mission near Mars. Hanshi's explanation was cogent and organized. I had very little to add. Whenever I opened my mouth, it was usually to chide Lisette whenever she cut in with needless commentary. Major General Kinnison's questions were always to the point. Despite it being a rather long conversation, it ended before we knew it. The only exchange of note was when we recounted how we descended to Mars' surface and searched these canal bays. What are the chances of there being survivors on the East Canal base? He asked us that question. Hanshi's explanation made it very clear that there was no chance of survivors. Yet he asked again, as if to make it absolutely clear, given how he never wasted time with anything else. Him asking this question seemed rather strange.
私たちが実際に見てきた状況と東キャナル基地で得た情報の範囲に限って言えば、生存者がいる可能性はほぼないと思います。
But she then seemed to realize something, as she quickly added.
ですが、大規模に人員を投入して隅々まで捜索をすれば、生きている不覚がある可能性もゼロではないと思いますわ。
Huh. So not maybe find survivors, but she thinks there really are survivors. We have neither the manpower nor supplies for that. Organizing that kind of mission is impossible. His expression and voice were perfectly flat, but I saw his clenched fist tremble. It was a small, minute detail. Even if it were possible, it wouldn't be the correct course of action. What we must do now is prepare for the hostilities to come. We must return you to Earth. I felt more like he was reassuring himself than speaking to us. I later learned that his wife and daughter, who was herself about our age, happened to be visiting Mars that day. Even knowing the chance of their survival was slim, he must have wanted nothing more than to comb the planet's surface in search of them. During our journey back to Earth, Kinnison worked ceaselessly with us, forsaking sleep in favor of further understanding our abilities and planning how to utilize them. Due to his attention to detail, he even figured out that we could go out in shifts and help push the transport ship to even faster speeds. That desperate measure allowed us to reach Earth in just a third of the time and usage of a voyage would take. The moment we arrived, we began intense negotiations with the top brass. The objective of the talks was the formation of our unit. Perhaps that was his way of distracting himself from the grief of losing his wife and child. And so, just before the decision battle began, our Special Warfare Trooper Trial Unit was founded under the premise that we would serve a central role in the war against the CC. At the moment, we are stationed on Base 32, a small orbital base in Earth's orbit located far away from the front line. It should be starting in a minute now. The holographic projection inside the HQ room displays how the CC Vanguard is beginning to push into the space sector, where the UEF have set up their ambush. In sync, the main force and the ambush units fire their salvos of ordnance.
お見事ですわ。
Hanshi's admiration was justified. The blasts extend in all directions, enveloping the CC in wave after wave of fiery explosions. None of the CC can escape their shower of shrapnel that washes over them like the coming tide. At least it would be if we were up against humans. Despite the amount of shots fired, space is huge. Although each individual piece of shrapnel from the explosions is highly lethal, the distance involved means that there are huge gaps in between them. spaceships, being too slow to take advantage of this, would still eventually take a hit. But the CC are so mobile that they actively swim into those wide gaps to dodge the incoming shrapnel, consistently evading harm altogether.
新式の複数弾頭式機動爆雷も導入されているということですが。
These new types of missiles are loaded with multiple autonomous warheads. Once released, the individual warheads trigger once they detect a nearby enemy. You have been able to evade that easily enough, wouldn't you?
簡単。進路をある程度限定する効果はあると思いますが、わざわざ破片が密集している地域を突破するより、そこを回避しようと行動する方が確率は高いですから。そうして誘導した空間に主力3体のレーザーの集中射撃を加えれば、機動力に優れた敵とはいえ、それなりの被害を与えることも期待できる。それが作戦の狙いなのでは？
I see. They made the fleet look like it was just bait, but the real decoy is actually the wave of ordnance, which restricts the CC's ability to maneuver. You're quite a smart one, First Lieutenant. That's exactly what the top brass had in mind. I can hear a bit of cheering mixed into the transmissions between HQ and the fleet. The operation is going according to plan. Several dozens of the alien flyers seem to be giving off infrared ray reactions, proof that the laser fire is hitting them. But this is as far as they get. The tides turn against humanity in the blink of an eye. The hints the lasers are scoring are doing nothing to stop the advance of the alien flyers. After breaking through both the screen of shrapnel created by the explosions and the barrage of laser fire, the CC began to swarm the fleets of ships that had dared to confront them. The cheering from earlier feels like a dream now. The comms are packing with nothing but screams and pain shouts. The UEF army is tumbling down a sharp incline toward ruin. If we assume that the same thing that happened on Mars is taking place here, the aliens must be tearing apart the vessel's hulls and abducting the crew to the mothership, dead or alive. So, is their objective just to kidnap people, or abduct people? And if that's the case, what are they doing with them? Wait, we don't have orders to engage yet. The HQ should play its trump card. They have no choice.
司令、それが僕らじゃないの？今さらスペシャルですか？ですが、敵の機動力をもってすれば、影響範囲から逃れるのはたやすいです。
Holding her breath, Country looks up at the commander's face.
単なる作戦じゃありませんわ。
Quite the opposite. HQ probably didn't predict we'd be cornered this badly, though. Still, orders are orders. A shadow falls over my heart. Each squadron's HQ received a classified order. In case something like this happened, we have our orders. They will see them through. The operation map starts to twinkle with small flux. The order is that if the enemy overwhelms the ship, they are at liberty to make efficient use of the special guaranteeing that it hits the enemy to deal a blow to their ranks. Those flashes are the final acts of each spaceship. They are self-destructing.
すごいな。まるで花火だ。でも、宇宙だと核でもあんなものか。
Given how much faster the CC are, it seems unlikely that any of the spaceships will escape. Their crews are basically doomed to be abducted. But still, telling them to self-destruct. No, that wasn't how the order went. All the order said was to simply make efficient use of the weapon. And what's the enemy's estimated casualty rate? The HQ staff officers replied that the enemy had lost maybe a tenth of their forces. Effective commanders must be murderous machines that know how to most effectively spend their allies' lives. But that's not what this is. This is the height of blind folly, the fantasy of self-purported geniuses who know nothing of the reality of the front lines. The fate of the ambushed fleets, which are made up of older vessels, is a tragic one. With their ordnance expanded, all they have left are outdated laser weapons. Their firepower is incapable of damaging the enemy. Their hulls are torn apart and their crews abducted and killed, until only silence remains. Some of the ships managed to detonate their reactor warheads and self-destruct, taking down some of the enemy flyers. But the enemy is so tough that unless the blast hit them at point-blank range, even that is not enough to kill them. This isn't a battle. It's a one-sided massacre. A few of the other ships try to plunge deeper into the heart of the enemy lines, trying to act as a diversion by the main fleet. And sadly, even the main fleet lacks the firepower to capitalize on these momentary distractions. Even the newest ships can't keep up with the enemy's mobility. They damage some of the flyers by hitting them point blank with their more powerful lasers. But for every alien maimed, many more ships are torn apart. The graph showing the casualties of our side continues its upward climb. By now, all the older ships are wiped out. 80% of the main fleet is gone, too. The UEF army is being utterly annihilated.
なんで命令が出ないんだ。切り札は僕らなのに。ここに切り札いるよ。いるんだってば。こんな劣等生が切り札とは。地球も済みましたわね。
Despite her dark words, Kanji has a smile on her face. I can hear an operator inform Commander Kinnison about an incoming transmission from the UEF headquarters. Finally, I thought I'd take more for them to get over their pride. The operator reads out the orders from HQ. The Special Warfare Trooper Trial Unit is ordered to cover the UEF military's main force and assist in the evacuation of the moon's civilian population.
こういう時、司令部の連中は悔しそうに言ってくれないと。キニスン司令、君、我々の所有兵器では目標に対し有効な手段がないことは認めよう。だが、そうしたら司令はメガネの端をクイッと上げて、そのための魔法少女って言わなきゃ。
The Commander Kinnison ignores Lisette's words without so much as blinking. Instead, he says to the operator, "How long until the CC's vanguard reaches the moon?" The operator replies that it'll take 4 hours. Calculate how long it'll take to evacuate all of the moon citizens. Commander Kinnison looks over at each one of us and says, First Lieutenant Lisette Ageveru, First Lieutenant Circe Bernhard, and First Lieutenant Li Kanshu. The Special Warfare Trooper is hereby ordered to deploy. Cover the moon citizens as they evacuate. I pray that you do all that you can. Kanshu and I salute, but Lisette responds by pumping her fist with excitement.
Yahoo! いつかやるか！ついに秘密戦隊のデビューだ！
Her murder eyes! I leap out of the airlock and into outer space. The sudden shift from the artificial gravity produced by centrifugal force to zero gravity makes my head spin, but I soon recover. The blue ball called Earth is directly beneath us. As glitched, it might seem to call it that. Oh, cliched, as it might seem to call it that. Its azure hue truly is undeniable. Above us is the dark abyss of space. The sensation of space against my skin feels warmer than it did back in the space sector around Mars. I still haven't gotten used to perceiving the cosmos directly through all 5 of my senses. It's such a strange feeling. We've already fought the aliens several times already, but this is our first time fighting as an official unit. On top of that, the lives of so many people rest on our slender shoulders. It's not just the lives of everyone on the moon, the future of everyone back on Earth as well. I can't fight back the combination of elation and fear creeping through me. Can I really shoulder such a heavy burden?
行くぞ行くぞ行くぞ!
From the looks of it, the set only feels excitement about all this. I wish I could feel that way too.
大丈夫ですか？もしうまくいかなくても、あなたのせいではありませんもの。
Kanji comes over to my side, whispering that to me.
もともと私たちが背負うべきものじゃないんですか？でも、たまたまそういう巡り合わせになってしまっただけ。できる範囲でやるしかありませんが、それ以上求められても困ります。
I nod, but I can't say that I feel relieved at all. After all, she's fighting for her homeland's people. She must be feeling an even heavier, more crushing sense of responsibility than I am. Yet she still found it in herself to share these words with me. It makes me happy. We fly through space faster and more gradually than any spaceship. We blitz to the civilian and military ships headed for the moon, accelerating the entire way. The distance between the Earth and the moon doesn't even seem real to me. Yes, light can cross it in a second, but in the past, when the Apollo 11 first landed on the moon, its journey took 4 days. Nowadays, the fastest spaceships can make the trip in a day. A civilian vessel needs 2. We finished our journey in less than 3 hours. Lisette wasn't slowing down, so let us keep up with her. She could have arrived even sooner. The space sector above the moon is in a state of chaos. Civilian ships carrying evacuating civilians, military crafts, media crews covering the evacuation, ships everywhere. Special warfare troopers. Remaining time until the entirety of the moon civilians are eliminated is roughly 31 hours. We receive a transmission from Commander Kinnison. If you destroy the aliens' advanced force, that should buy us a day until the massive alien arrives. I expect you to put up a good fight, but maybe that's the kind of plantitude you might expect me to say now. So I won't tell you to do that. I already know that you are capable. We finish passing by the moon, rapidly approaching the battlefield where the aliens are massacring the UEF forces. Some ships self-destruct their reactor warheads. Others are torn apart with the CC before they can. While still others are punched full of gigantic holes. Crewmen suffocate to death as their space suits are torn from their bodies. All these people are literally dying in front of your eyes. And then she's super, super excited. I can't get over her. Lisette's body glows with white light as she manifests a gigantic sword. The sword grows bigger and bigger until it's so large that its width is longer than Lisette herself. As always, Lisette doesn't seem to be listening. Oh, I saw that coming. But somehow, or maybe also in typical Lisette fashion, the massive sword sweeps through the CC swarm without even so much as scratching a single UEF ship. Tanshi manifests her 6 teddy bears around herself. I nod, manifest the spear of light in my hand, and fly off. With swings of my spear, I widen the safe space Lisette initially claimed open. Circe's 6 teddy bears. Khonshu's 6 teddy bears, they made a typo. Laser beams that shoot down any enemies that try to sneak up behind us. Lisette cuts through every CC she comes across, one after another. She utterly overwhelms them. No other word can describe it. Meanwhile, I sweep up any enemies that slip by her or that she leaves crippled. The swarm of CC flyers visibly changes tactics. It seems they're shifting their focus from the UEF fleet to us. Acknowledging us as the bigger threat, they peel away from the ships and rush towards us. Lisette laughs loudly. With rapid spins of her blade of light, she mows down the CC swarming around her. Somehow her sword looks like it's grown even larger, bigger than before. She's amazing. Her lines might sound more fitting of a villain than a hero, but either way, she's still amazing. Oh no, Lisette's too cool. Still, as cool as she is, I can't afford to spend all my time gawking at her. The ugly CC are trying to swarm me too. Utilizing my spear's long range, I cut down several of them with a single slash. Khonshu's covering fire is precise. Whenever there's more enemies than I can handle, she either forces them back or outright eliminates them. The UEF spaceships take advantage of her destruction to escape. They're all state-of-the-art ships, meaning they are probably remnants from the Central Fleet, but they are all heavily damaged, and some of them are obviously internally crippled.
なんとかなりそうですわね。
Apparently, there aren't any CC left behind us as Kanchi flies over to my side. Despite how far away the set is, I can clearly hear her laughing maniacally.
逃げないならやってしまうぞ。逃げてもやっちゃうけどね。
I'll kill you even if you do run. As the set cackles, I can hear the howling of the CC flyers as they're cut into pieces. The two of us look at each other for a second.
あの人はどんな時も変わりませんわね。
That's my Lisette for you. We're interrupted by a military vessel approaching us. It's missing half its thrusters and its entire weapons module. I recognize it as one of the new Orion-class cruisers.
あれが多分最後の一隻ですわ。
We watch it pass us by when...
おかしいですわ。人間の気配がしませんわ。
Just as Kanchi raises her voice in alarm, CC flyers that had been clinging to the far side of the ship leap away and rush straight for us. They're nearly right on top of us, hoping that we fail to react in time. But one of Kanchi's teddy bears pops into existence between us and the advancing CC that fires a single red laser beam before its entire body explodes. The wave of CC scatters to avoid the blast, giving us the time we need. One enemy hurtles straight through the shockwave, but I cut it down with ease. Another one explodes as Kanchi's other 5 teddy bears burn down with concentrated fire. With the element of surprise lost, the remaining CC pose no real threat to us any longer. The two of us mop the rest up in mere seconds after that. Soon enough, the CC's attacks abate, Lisette says.
手応えがなかった。
With that disappointed remark, she turns around and begins returning to base. That's how we conclude our first official recorded battle.